Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the fifth lecture of Rest in Belief. Up to Lecture 4, we examined the greatness of traditional dispensationalism, running through Larkin, Schofield, and Ruckman, along with their painful limitations. They were undeniably trapped in Clarence Larkin's error of viewing Pentecost in Acts 2 as the beginning of the church age. However, throughout church history, there were those who realized the limitations of this traditional dispensationalism and attempted to take a step further into the truth. These are the mid-Acts dispensationalists. They inherited some of E.W. Bullinger's insights and tried to approach the truth. But ultimately, they lost their way at the most critical juncture and fell into extreme error. Today in Lecture 5, we will dissect the fatal doctrinal collisions to uncover exactly where and why mid-Acts dispensationalism collapsed. First, let us clarify what mid-Acts means. It literally refers to the middle of the book of Acts. While studying the Bible, these individuals realized an important fact. Pentecost in Acts 2 is a Jewish feast, and Peter preached exclusively to Jews. Therefore, Pentecost cannot be the beginning of our Gentile church today. This was an excellent and highly accurate insight. Therefore, they pinpointed the conversion of Paul, the apostle to the Gentiles in Acts 9, or his official departure for missionary work in Acts 13, as the starting point of the church which is his body today. They achieved a half success by dividing the early and middle parts of Acts. However, their pursuit of truth stopped exactly right there. Do you know the most fatal blunder of the mid-Acts camp? They became so fixated on the single fact that Paul is the apostle to the Gentiles that they forcefully lumped all the epistles written by Paul into one identical doctrine. They completely failed to divide Acts 28. The most massive and formidable spiritual dividing line in the entire Bible. As a result, they teach that all 13 of Paul's epistles, from Romans to Philemon, contain the exact same doctrine for the pure Gentile church, living in this current dispensation. It is as if they are claiming, everything Paul wrote is my exact same doctrine. But when we refuse to divide these 13 epistles into pre-Acts 28 and post-Acts 28, and instead try to force them all together, let us verify through the Bible what horrific theological collisions occur within the epistles themselves. If all 13 epistles are the exact same church-age doctrine, their doctrines must align perfectly. But look at the issue of water baptism. In 1 Corinthians 1:14, written before Acts 28, Paul says, "I thank God that I baptized none of you, but Crispus and Gaius." Although he was reluctant to baptize, it is undeniable that water baptism physically existed and was practiced in the church during this period. But what does Ephesians 4:5, a prison epistle written after Acts 28, declare? One Lord, one faith, one baptism. It nails down the absolute fact that there is only one invisible spirit baptism that places a believer into the body of Christ. The exact same Paul wrote both. So why does one side clearly have water baptism while the other side claims there is only one spiritual baptism? Mid-Acts scholars cannot resolve this contradiction and are merely left scrambling for forced excuses. What about the gifts of miracles and healing? If you look at 1 Corinthians 12:28, written before Acts 28, miracles and gifts of healings were clearly and actively operating within the church. However, after Acts 28 passed and Israel's blindness was definitively pronounced, Paul, in the prison epistle of Philippians 2, mourns because his precious co-worker, Epaphroditus, fell sick to the point of death, and he could not heal him miraculously. Even in 2 Timothy 4:20, Paul abandons his co-worker Trophimus sick, stating, "But Trophimus have I left at Miletum sick." If the gift of healing was still granted within the exact same body of Christ, why did the post-Acts 28 Paul fail to heal even his own co-workers, having to resort to medicine or abandon them while they were sick? Mid-Acts dispensationalists focus so narrowly on the single figure of Paul that they completely miss the massive dispensational turning point of Acts 28. There is only one key to unlocking this contradiction. We must boldly split and divide the 13 epistles into before and after Acts 28. The epistles written before Acts 28 are doctrines directed at the Samaritan transitional church, where Jewish spiritual priorities still remained, a church viewed as the wife. That is exactly why Jewish signs, such as miracles and water baptism, were mixed in there. However, after Israel was completely cast aside in Acts 28:28, the prison epistles like Ephesians and Colossians, written from prison, are on an entirely different dimension. These epistles are the perfect doctrine of grace directed at the pure Gentile church, where the Jewish medium has vanished, directed at the very physical body of Christ, which transcends the status of the wife. The mid-Acts attempt to forcefully lump Paul's 13 epistles together ended in the disaster of horrific doctrinal collisions. They failed to divide the word rightly to the very end. Then who was the very first figure to realize this great dividing line of Acts 28 and the immense value of the prison epistles? In our next session, Lecture 6, we will finally deal with the great scholar who became the primary motif of our channel, E.W. Bullinger. We will explore what magnificent insights he discovered, and yet why we cannot accept his theology identically, but must recalibrate, or retune, it. We will continue this profound journey of truth. Until now, this has been Rest in Belief. Thank you.